As well, universities and so-called Mickey Mouse degrees, what do you reckon to them? Because there's some new rules out today that basically will mean that many colleges might end up getting fines of up to £500,000 if they don't submit enough students into jobs. Should getting a job though be the only reason why you go to university? We'll have that and more, but first let's have a look at the news headlines.
I'm Polly Middlehurst with the latest news headlines at just after 6 o'clock. And our top story today. Boris Johnson says he's adamant that there's no evidence to support allegations of blackmail made by a senior Conservative MP. The chair of the Public Administration Committee, William Ragg, said earlier today that rebels who'd like to oust the Prime Minister have faced pressures and intimidation. Tory MP Andrew Bridgen told GB News earlier he's heard similar reports.
I've seen a little bit of it myself. It's tremendously serious. This is not the first leadership challenge or confidence vote I've been involved in. I've seen it happen with David Cameron. I've seen it happen with Theresa May. But I've never encountered intimidation like this. This is something completely different. It's very, very serious.
Meanwhile, the former Conservative MP who defected to Labour, Christian Wakeford, claims he was threatened about the loss of a school in his constituency if he didn't toe the party line. Well, speaking earlier, here's what Boris Johnson had to say in response to those allegations.
I've seen no evidence, heard no evidence to support any of those allegations. And what I'm focused on is what we're doing to deal with the number one priority of the British people, which is coming through COVID.
Boris Johnson, well away from Westminster, Scotland's First Minister says she won't be following in England's footsteps and getting rid of all COVID restrictions just yet. Nicola Sturgeon refused to move away from what she's calling her cautious approach, despite criticism from Scottish Conservatives claiming that recent restrictions have been unnecessary. Meanwhile, COVID restrictions will be eased in Northern Ireland, we're told, from tomorrow. In fact, from midday, people will no longer have to remain seated at hospitality venues and the limit of 6 per table will be removed. Stormont ministers also agreed nightclubs will be able to reopen next Wednesday and vaccine passports will no longer be needed in pubs, restaurants or cinemas. A new report has found former Pope Benedict XVI failed to take action in 4 cases of alleged child abuse while he was bishop in Germany. The investigation looked into allegations of sexual abuse at a Roman Catholic church in Munich between 1945 and 2019. The former Pope denies the accusations. Audio has emerged of what is believed to be a final conversation between the Texas synagogue attacker and his younger brother back in the UK, who was urging his sibling to surrender. Malik Akram from Greater Manchester was shot dead by the FBI following a 10-hour standoff. No one else was injured. 2 men have been arrested in Birmingham and Manchester this morning as part of the investigation.
Why are you doing that, man? Why are you doing that for? What's wrong with you? Why are you coming
But
down
I need to do that.
You don't need to do this. Whatever you're doing, man, just pack it in, you'll get a bit of time and you'll come out. Money's come back to Black. Do you know what I mean? He's come back last week. Do you know what I mean? He done his time. Whatever you're doing, man, think about your kids, man. Think about these guys are innocent. These guys you've got there, they're innocent people, man.
The European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen says the EU will respond with massive economic and financial sanctions if there are further attacks from Russia on Ukraine. That comes as the US President Joe Biden says he believes Russian President Vladimir Putin will move in on the nation, and he's been warning the Kremlin will pay a heavy price if it invades. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken warned the human toll from Russian aggression would be high.
He's laying the groundwork for an invasion because he doesn't believe that Ukraine is a sovereign nation. He said it flat out to President Bush in 2008, and I quote, "Ukraine isn't a real country." This is not only about a possible invasion and war. It's about whether Ukraine has a right to exist as a sovereign nation. It's about whether Ukraine has a right to be a democracy.
Antony Blinken. And lastly, a British-Belgian teenager has broken the record to become the youngest woman to fly solo right around the world. Zara Rutherford has landed in Belgium after spending 5 months covering 5 continents in the world's fastest microlight aircraft on her own. The 19-year-old totted up 51,000 kilometres on her journey. On TV, online and through your radio via DAB+, you're with GB News. Now more from Dewbs & Co.
Thanks for that, Polly. Well, keep me company until 7 o'clock tonight. My panel, we've got the journalist Ruth Dudley-Edwards. It's your first time, so welcome to Dewbs & Co, Ruth. We've also got Kevin Rooney, who's a teacher and author, and Ellie Mayo-Hagan, who's the director of the think tank, the Centre for Labour and Social Studies. So good evening to all of you. And you know the drill by now on this programme, I hope, anyway, because I hope that you're regular. I hope that you've got us on subscribe on YouTube, clicked onto your planner or whatever it is that you do these days. Or as well, if you're a new person, hello and welcome. And hello to you as well if you're listening rather than watching us tonight. But you know the drill. It's not just about us and our thoughts, it's about you and yours. I want to know what is on your mind tonight and what do you think about the stories that we'll be getting into. You can reach me on email, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet me at Michelle Dewbs or at GBNews. First of all, though, you might have noticed that there were some figures released today which show that the highest rates of COVID are currently among primary school children. The UK Health Security Agency figures reveal that the increase is among 5 to 9-year-olds. This comes after the Daily Mail newspaper reported that Boris and Carrie Johnson's 6-week-old baby, Romy, was badly hit by COVID. And health figures have also shown that more babies were going to hospital with COVID during this latest Omicron wave. But health experts said that the babies were not very sick with the virus. Now, anyone that's got children probably will have their ears pricked up by some of those figures and some of those kind of statistics that we're banding around, not least me, by the way, because, of course, I've got a baby of my own. So when I hear about rises and cases, etc., I think it's always very important to understand the context around them, rather than just kind of panic when we hear about rises. So joining me to help understand what is actually going on is analyst, Jamie Jenkins. I want to call you a regular to my show now. You are the former health statistical board at the ONS. Welcome to my show tonight. Tell us, what is going on, Jamie?
Yeah, Michelle, hopefully we can reassure some of the parents this evening. So as you've seen over the last month through kind of the Omicron wave, we've seen huge numbers of cases of Omicron across the country, and that's kind of seen itself kind of through to children as well. They didn't go up as fast to start with because, remember, primary schools were kind of closed over the Christmas period, and we do know that when children kind of go back to school, they start spreading the virus. So yeah, we're seeing record cases, so that sounds quite alarming. And then because there's so many more cases in society, we're also seeing kind of record numbers of children in hospital with COVID. So again, that sounds alarming. So people are thinking, oh, hang on now, why aren't we trying to close the schools to stop the spread of COVID? So I think what we need to start looking at then is the wider context in all of this. Because if, just take an example, if 100% of children or the 100% of the population had COVID, everybody who goes into hospital who has a test, you see record numbers of people with COVID. So each Thursday we get some numbers from NHS England, and what we're seeing now is over half the patients, or around half of patients of people in hospital now with COVID. This is across all ages, by the way, are in hospital with COVID, but not specifically because of it. And that's kind of what we're seeing through the Omicron variant. If we look at children, the best way, Michelle, to really understand what's going on here is to look at the total number of children who were in hospital. So I've been looking at that from the end of November right through to a few days ago. And actually, through this Omicron wave, we've got fewer children actually in hospital than what we had before the Omicron wave hit us around the mid-December. So the stats actually show we're not seeing any more children in hospital through the Omicron wave. We are picking up more children with Omicron, and somebody tweeted me today to say they were in Great Ormond Street. Their child was in Great Ormond Street to have an operation. They'd had COVID a few months back. Hopefully, it's not a serious operation, but they tested positive when they went in, but they're not in because of COVID, and that's what you've got to understand with the numbers. We're not seeing more children overall in hospital through this Omicron wave.
And, you know, I admit, I do tend to split hairs when it comes to with and from, because I think it's such an important statistic to focus on. You mentioned there that some of the children, they're there with it as opposed to from it. Do we have any idea on what that kind of looks like, roughly what percentage of children are hospitalised with and specifically because of COVID?
Yeah, well, if we look at the younger children, Michelle, about 2/3 of them actually find out that they have COVID when they go into the hospital. So, it's a significant number. If Omicron was leading to huge numbers of extra children falling ill, you'd expect to see more children in hospital now than what we saw before the kind of this record rising cases. But we're not seeing that. As I say, it's coming down. And that's just hospitalizations. We do know that the discharge time is no different to pre-COVID times. Is about the average child gets discharged within 2 days. And then if we start focusing on the death statistics, which are obviously at the more extreme end, it's very, very rare for a child to die with COVID. There's two distinctions we can look at here. Children who die where COVID is mentioned on the death certificate. And if we look at all the deaths in the last kind of year or so, it's like 0.09% of all the deaths with COVID among kind of children. And that's just with COVID mentioned on the death certificate, not specifically if it was the cause of the death. And an indicator to look at that, Michelle, is in October, we had 6 deaths with children where it was mentioned on the death certificate that COVID was kind of on as part of the death, but only one of those 6, it was the main factor. Each death is tragic for each family, especially for children. But remember, we do have significant numbers of children who die every single week, but it's very rare for children to die of COVID. In particular, people to go into hospital specifically because of COVID. We're not seeing any increases through the Omicron wave.
I have to say, Jamie, listening to you, it does certainly kind of reassure me because, as I always mention on this programme, and as you know anyway, I am a mum. So when I see anything to do with children, I immediately kind of think, oh gosh, do I need to think differently, do differently? So it's reassuring to hear what you say. Is there anything else that anyone should be aware of in relation to child hospitalisations with COVID before I let you go?
No, I just think the main thing is, I've seen people tweeting, I've seen news articles about these record numbers of children with COVID in hospital. Don't be alarmed by these. Obviously, COVID is going to cause some illnesses in some people. The vast majority of children, you talk about record cases. We're seeing people going into hospital with COVID, as I say, with not specifically for it, rising. But we're talking like huge numbers of cases. My children, 6 and 8, had COVID very mild. In fact, they were probably more fun at home. This isn't obviously for everybody the same thing, but it's very rare for children to get seriously ill. And I think seeing these numbers and record numbers, people are going to start getting scared. But the facts don't really back up any scare stories.
Jamie Jenkins, thank you certainly for reassuring me and hopefully some of our other viewers. Thank you for your time. Kevin, it's awful, actually, to talk about children and hospitalisations, and because nobody even wants to think of any child in hospital for any reason. But I deliberately wanted to focus on that because I think that as a population, many people are terrified of COVID. Some understandably so, some perhaps less understandably so. So I think it's really important when we share these kind of figures, etc., that we do spend a couple of minutes just getting some context there. But if I forget, but if I move on from the kind of hospitalisations, etc., and talk, you're a teacher, so I'm quite interested in your perspective on this because we've seen, of course, now that there's no masks in classrooms. Yeah, I have to say, I've had quite a few people contact me from yesterday and today saying that schools are still insisting on children wearing masks in the classroom. And it makes me kind of think about the whole impact of COVID on children. We had a young person on the show yesterday who was describing her experience, but I wonder your thoughts.
Well, just to let your viewers know, I teach in a London school because I know the geography of Britain can be a bit different with COVID and where it's at. But first of all, the classrooms in the London schools at the moment are pretty full, pretty much. There are not that many empty spaces because COVID was at its height before Christmas, effectively. So I was quite struck by all the lessons today and this week by how full the classrooms were. A couple of absences, but not many. And strangely enough, maybe on average, I think a bit of a mix in terms of mask. On average, maybe 6 to 10 kids still wearing a mask. They want to wear a mask, they're entitled to wear a mask. But many of the kids absolutely not wearing a mask. So do you know what, Michelle? The kids are taking it in their stride. And I have to say, the particular school that I'm in, and having lots of teacher friends, I actually think we're pretty much in the London schools taking in our stride, no massive concern or panic. Am I allowed to say? I think it's a fairly happy story, is where I would put it at. And following on from that guy who was a breath of fresh air, that statistician, and the key word there is context. When you place it in the round in the context, you see that this isn't a mega, huge, dramatic story on the scale of things. We know COVID was in the past, but it's absolutely not right now. And I think that's what I got from that guy. And, you know, where it's at in our school and with the parents will test their kids as and when they see fit. And we should trust the parents to do that. And I have to say, Michelle, I do feel and sense a real sense of calm around the parents and teachers that I know. And the final thing is, look, the great story here is the schools are open. The schools are doing their business. And what we don't want, again, ever is school closures. I mean, think about what that meant. Loss of learning, loss of friendships, loss of socialisation, loss of the kids effectively growing up, robbed of all those memories and so on and so forth, and pivotal moments in their life. So I think, Michelle, I wouldn't be on the doom-mongering side of things. I think things are going quite well and long may it continue. Final point on that, if you don't mind me saying, Michelle, I actually think it might be a nice time to have a conversation about having schools designated as effectively essential infrastructure so that they're not closed just as quickly in the future. I think, you know, what I take from this as we start to get over the worst of it is just how long schools were closed in the first place. I think we need to have a look back at that and ask some serious questions about why that was, because I personally think closing schools that long did more harm than good.
I completely agree with you there, but Ruth, your thoughts?
Well, I agree with that completely. And I'm very disturbed to see that some of the educational trade unions are calling for keeping the restrictions, keeping the masks, all the rest of it. And it's very hard not to get the feeling that they just don't want their members to have much work to do. You know, trade unions have been appalling on this one. They really have. But they're not thinking of, they're thinking of the teachers, they're not thinking of the children. And it's like with the care homes scandals. You know, if we ever have to go through this again, we've got to think of the individuals involved. We've got to think of the children. We've got to think of the old people in the care home who were sacrificed, given a year or 2 years of misery to keep them alive. How many of them actually wanted to be kept alive in order to be alone? You know, we're terrified of death in this country. And the hysteria that's been developed by media, social media and mainstream media has been a shocker, absolute shocker. People are being encouraged to be terrified. They're being encouraged to be hysterical. And this is just another case of it now.
Not on Dewbs and Kerr, no, I don't encourage anyone. I try my best to try and calm the hysteria. Anyway, Ellie May, your thoughts?
Well, I decided to ask the NEU about this today, the Teachers' Union, because I was interested to hear what they said. And actually, it wasn't that they are only interested in the teachers. What they care about is the fact that education has been so disrupted for children over the last year and a half. And, you know, and I agree that the situation is much better in London, but across the country as a whole, last week, 1 in 12 teachers were off because of COVID, and obviously that can't continue. And what they've been calling for, which I completely agree with, is actually changes to the classroom that are permanent, particularly in terms of ventilation, so that children can go to school and teachers can go to school and they don't have to worry about catching COVID in the first place, so that means that they don't have to take time off and there's no isolation. And this is quite an easy, cost-effective measure for the government to take, but they still haven't taken it. So we're looking at 300,000 classrooms and there's only been 7,000 filters put in. You know, and it's just not good enough. I think the government tells us that we need to live with COVID now, which is something that I agree with, but I think that means that we need to make changes in our society so we can live with it in a way that isn't destructive, that doesn't increase death, and that keeps people safe. And I think changes to schools is just one element of that, but there also needs to be lots of other changes, like, for example, a big rise in sick pay, because this country has the lowest sick pay in Europe.
Do you mean rise in statutory sick pay, yeah?
Yeah.
Kevin, you're a teacher, and Ellie mentions there 1 in 12 teachers are off because of COVID. Now, what I'd be interested then to drill into that figure is, are they off because of COVID or contact because of being in contact with someone? Have they got symptoms? Are they not? And you mentioned essential infrastructure. Actually, what I would do is I would make sure that ever again there was a list of essential workers that were exempt from some of the isolation rules. I mean, I know that they've reduced now to the 5 days or so, but some of the isolation context, you know, not you, it's not your fault, I'm not blaming you, but, you know, it literally brings services, in this case, schools, to its knees. And I think a lot of them make no sense. I mean, I've got it ringing in my head now, the stupid rule, nonsensical, non-scientific rule, if you ask me, of the isolation period of a contact with a COVID case. If you're unvaccinated, you come into contact with a positive case, not if you've got it, if you come into contact, you've got to self-isolate for 10 days. I think it's pathetic, and I don't believe it's steeped in science. But anyway, I won't go off on a tangent. But I guess I'm agreeing with your sentiment of essential infrastructures and key workers, etc. Yeah, look, I mean, I feel passionately about that. I feel strongly about that. I really do think schools were closed for too long. And, you know, you look back on that period and, like, retail outlets were open and all sorts of things in the schools were closed. And in terms of our priorities, I think we got that wrong. Look, I think your point is a cracker again, Michelle, about the actual testing of people. Now, I want to be humble and try to defer to the medical experts and people who know more than me about how long you should be isolating for and so on and so forth. But it is the case, and I'm being anecdotal, that an awful lot of the teachers that I know who were off and missed time, it wasn't because they were necessarily that ill themselves. It was because of the rules that they had to isolate for X amount of days and so on and so forth. So it'd be good to have that conversation. I'm not trying to hit any medical expert with a big stick. I'd like them to just tell us a bit more on that. Yeah, I mean, gosh, my thoughts on the whole mandatory testing, the repeated testing of all these kids, that's a whole different topic altogether. I'm going to take a quick break, though. When I come back, I want to talk about women and equality. That's what we all want, isn't it? But does it apply to every scenario? Or should there be some exemptions? I'll tell you why I'm asking after the break.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world. If
you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs & Co. Now, a woman who had broken down at night in the dark claimed on Twitter that she'd been told by an AA call handler that the breakdown company treats lone women and men exactly the same because that's equality. Well, Dr. Helen Mott claimed that she was told she'd have to then wait alone in the dark for 90 minutes or more, and added that the firm's policies need a revamp. Dr. Mott released her message to the AA on her Twitter page, saying, "I'm a lone woman whose car's broken down at night. Your call handlers told me that I'm reading this. It's basically everything that I've just told you," the tweet said. Anyway, she then released the reply that she received from the AA, which said the following: "You've been advised correctly. We don't prioritise based on gender. We do, though, consider the location. So, as an example, we'd prioritise someone on a motorway over someone in a supermarket car park." And we contacted the AA earlier today to ask if this really is their policy, and they said the following: "We accept the wording of our initial response wasn't great and have apologised. In fact, we prioritise anyone at risk, but more often than not, it will be lone women. In breakdowns involving lone women where there is any concern raised by the customer, they receive the highest level of care and priority." And that's fascinating. But never mind that, I want to go back to the first point. What do you think? We want all this equality, don't we, us women? But are there times when it shouldn't apply? For example, should a breakdown company say that lone women will get priority? Or is it not as simple as that? Ruth?
I don't think it's as simple as that, Michelle. You could have a lone woman who was very adept at self-defence and in the full of her health in a perfectly busy place and in no urgent need of anything, up against a chap with 2 children in his car, or a chap who happens to be, a polio victim or something. Rules are always a problem. We have spent 2 years complaining about stupid rules that make no sense when you're actually dealing with reality. And I would have thought that surely the rule for the AA is to have common sense. I'm sorry about my voice.
Don't you worry. I can hear...
Not COVID. It's just cracking.
I can hear what you're saying. And by the way, I do find it fascinating now. Anytime I cough or sneeze or anything, I feel I need to say to everyone, it's not COVID, it's not COVID. I've just got a cough or a sneeze. Anyway, we digress.
I think it's not easy being a woman at the moment because there are these mixed messages going out. I come from a generation of feminists who fought for freedom and equality and the opportunity of doing exciting things and not being overprotected. And I look at that 19-year-old who's just flown around the world. Isn't she wonderful? And she's saying she's thrilled to do this because it reminds women of the things they can do. So we're inviting women to be kick-ass women and do anything they can. And the next minute we're telling them that they're worrying about safe spaces and not being offended. And there are completely mixed messages. When it comes to the AA, use your common sense. If a woman is in a dodgy place, of course you give them priority.
Ellie Mae Hagan?
Well, I think probably the reason that this is a news story is because there have been several women, murdered recently in the street. They've been attacked by men and murdered. And so I think that's why at the moment there's a lot of emphasis on lone women and the danger that they face in public spaces. But actually, I think what the statistics show us is that women are more likely to be harmed by men that they know, by their partners and by their family members. So I think what I would like to see really, instead of us sort of berating the AA, I would like to see us, talk about investing more in domestic violence refuges, which, as we know, many of which have been closed down over the last 10 years. You had a situation not too long ago where it was around 150 women a day were being turned away from domestic violence refuges. And to me, this is the real problem when it comes to... let me rephrase that because that makes it sound like I'm belittling women who are attacked by strangers. But thankfully, that is more rare. But the common problem that women face is being attacked by their partners or family members. And we know that 2 women a week die because of domestic violence in this country. So I do think that the AA, when you have like a lone woman on a motorway on her own and a lone man in exactly the same circumstances, I would be inclined to say that the AA should prioritise the woman because when you have like for like, she is in more danger. But when it comes to women's safety as a whole, I think that thankfully attacks by strangers are rare, and we also need to talk about the bigger and more pressing problem of domestic violence and the lack of care for women who face that.
Kevin Rooney.
Yeah, I think I agree generally with what most of the panel are saying. I think there's two quick things come to mind. That woman on Twitter was having a go at the AA. If I pick her up right, she seems to be sending out a message that women are automatically not safe in public places. And that's a really, really dangerous thing she's saying. It needs to be examined. I profoundly disagree with that woman. I almost feel defensive saying that as a man, such as the culture and climate in which we live, but I really do disagree with her. But the second thing is, why don't we use the common sense that both the other panellists have talked about and judge things in their own merits? Let me give you an example. If I'm the AA person on the phone and the woman says, I broke down, it's a dark night, there's a fella staring at me and lurking, then you know what? I would absolutely prioritise that woman. And I think surely we can arrive at that sort of situation. But if we were to effectively institutionalise and embed what this woman on Twitter wants, that a woman is automatically more deserving than anybody else of a pickup truck coming to them or whatever, where does that leave us? I mean, what's going to be next? Can
I just actually respond to that,
Sure.
which is that so I'm now married, which means that when I'm out and about, I'm usually with my husband. But before I met my husband and when I was single, I used to go out in the evenings in North London and would often be walking around on my own. And I had lots and lots of scary experiences, sometimes in broad daylight, but usually after dark, even just sort of taking short walks from the bus to the pub. And I remember actually getting a night bus home and getting off the bus and then walking back to my house. It was only a 5-minute walk. And I ended up getting followed by a man, and I had to run away and hide in a bush until he was gone. And this was actually like a very, very regular experience for me as a single woman, walking around in actually crowded areas and often in broad daylight. I remember walking to work once and having a man sort of approach me in the morning. And so actually I think for most women, you know, there was a survey done a few years ago that found that 100% of the women who were asked in this survey said that they'd experienced street harassment of some kind. So actually being in public places for women when they're on their own does present a lot of challenges and does often invite unwanted attention from men. And I think that is unfortunately a reality that we live in, and it's something that we need to accept. And if we don't like it, then we need to actually do something about it. And that involves addressing the behaviour of men rather than being critical of the women.
Kevin Rooney, how does all this make you feel? Because I'm getting emails flying in. I just had one from Russell saying, here we go again, the man-hating half an hour. What exactly do women want? To be treated equally or equally according to them? Roger says, oh, here we go. No, they shouldn't prioritise women. I thought women wanted equality. What is it like being a guy? Because I'm getting an interesting sense coming through.
Look, it's interesting. Look, I'll tell you why I find this so tricky, because there's always a danger when you open your mouth, you enter into sort of culture war and you're one camp or the other. I mean, I think, LMA, that, you know, when a woman's walking down the street, my instinct is...
This is the final word on this debate, by the way. You've got the final one.
Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of men, and she's perfectly safe. So I don't disagree that hold on, but I don't disagree that women have had situations with men. I completely accept that. What I am saying though is it is absolutely a problem and problematic if we're going to reorganise society in terms of the AA and pickup trucks and every other service in this country. That takes us to an entirely different place, and I think it's a bad thing.
Well, there you go. That's what Kevin thinks. It's a bad thing. What do you think? Let me know your thoughts. GBviews at gbnews.uk. Going to take a quick break. When we come back, there's been calls to tax the super wealthy more money by the super wealthy. Yeah, you heard me right. They've put calls out to make themselves pay more tax. Why don't they just pay more tax then? It can't be that difficult, can it? We'll have that story after the break.
Coming up on Dan Button tonight, as NHS workers are forced to get jabbed in order to keep their jobs, Dr. Steve James, the brave medic who stood up to the Health Secretary, joins me to defend everyone's right to choose. What can be done to stop Brits eating themselves to death? TV star James Argent, who lost 13 stone after having life-saving surgery, believes support and not shame is the key to battling the obesity crisis. He'll discuss his incredible transformation. Plus, legendary US journalist Megyn Kelly and GB News star Mark Dolan give their insight on the globe's biggest stories. And I'll break down the day's headlines with my superstar panel. The Tory grandee turned broadcaster Michael Portillo, political stalwart Christine Hamilton, and the author and journalist Amy Nicol. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Hello there, welcome back. And tell you, we've just been having quite an interesting debate in the break about the whole kind of men-women thing. Kevin kind of saying he does feel it's like almost you've got to tread on eggshells, for want of a better word. Tell me if I'm misrepresenting you there. But
spot on.
Yeah, you almost, as a man, you feel like you've got to tread on eggshells because you don't know if you're coming or going for fear of saying the wrong thing. Anyway, just a quick reminder, because I know lots of you are listening as opposed to watching us. So just a reminder who is on my panel tonight, so you know who you're hearing. Obviously myself, Michelle Dewberry, but you've got Ruth Dudley Edwards, who is a journalist. You've got Kevin Rooney, who is a teacher and author, and you've got Ellie Mayo-Hagan, who is a director of the Centre for Labour and Social Studies. Now, let's talk about money, shall we? Always a nice topic. And it's the age-old debate, isn't it? Should the rich pay more tax? Well, they seem to think so, because more than 100 members of the global super-rich have called on their governments to tax us now to help pay for the pandemic response and tackle the gulf between rich and poor. There are 171 billionaires in the UK, 24 more than a year ago. And Britain created a record number of billionaires during the coronavirus pandemic. So, should we tax the wealthy more? Should the taxation system be overhauled to make it fairer? I did chuckle a little bit, I've got to say, as I was reading that, because I wonder how many of these super wealthy that are writing these wonderful letters in the public and putting their name to it, saying, yes, sir, pick me, let me give you more of my wealth. I wonder how many of them actually use various different schemes to minimise their tax and take use of the voluntary schemes in many countries, which would enable them to voluntarily pay more tax if they chose to anyway. I digress. Ellie Mayo-Hagan, your thoughts?
Well, I agree with the call for the rich to pay more tax because, you know, we know that we've got a cost of living squeeze coming, which I'm really worried about because rents will go up, food will go up, travel will go up, energy will go up. And it's going to be catastrophic for a lot of people in this country. Tax is going to go up for ordinary people. So I think that, you know, given that rich people got richer during the pandemic, I think it's only fair that they pay, you know, what they owe and a bit more in tax to make sure that ordinary working people, like the people who watch this show, can still afford to pay their bills and that they're not having to worry about making ends meet, which I really worry is what's going to happen this year. So I think it's a good thing.
But do you think, to my point, because I think it's wonderful that incredibly wealthy people write these public letters saying, oh, please take more of my money. I mean, who wouldn't like that? But it's just a little bit weird to me, because if you want to pay more tax, you can in a variety of different ways without actually calling publicly on governments to enable you to do so, surely.
Well, actually, many years ago in a past life, I was involved in a campaign to oppose Starbucks avoiding tax. And we managed to... They were so sort of scared by the fact that it had been pointed out that they were avoiding tax, that they offered to pay the Treasury, I think it was 10 million in tax voluntarily. And the Treasury said, well, that's not tax, it's a donation. So unless you have a tax rate that is enforced by HMRC, you can't actually pay more tax. So I think what they're saying is, let's change the law so that it's not just us who wrote this letter, but it's actually everybody who is rich, who's a millionaire or a billionaire, contributes just that little bit more, and it is only a small amount that they're suggesting, that could make sure that ordinary people's national insurance contributions don't have to go up, but also that there could be a retrofitting programme to make sure that houses are insulated so that people don't have to pay as much on their energy bills. And I just think that's a great idea and I fully support it.
Yeah, Kevin, I think the reason that I'm treating this with a bit of I guess I'm being maybe a bit cynical about it all, is because in various different countries, as I'm saying, you can voluntarily pay more tax. In the UK, for example, to donate more towards general public expenditure, apparently all that's required is a simple email to the Treasury providing basic information and basically clarification, of course, that this is your money, it's yours to give, you don't have to give it back, etc., etc. Which sounds wonderful, doesn't it? So here's the thing. The accounts of the Debt Management Office for the year ended the 31st of March 2020 showed that this type of tax that they'd received totals the massive sum of £48,957. So all these people that are so desperate to pay more money, Kevin, what are they doing?
I mean, I suspect there's a little bit of wokeism from the actual statement, but at the same time, when Ella May was saying, you know, we're just talking about a little bit of their wealth, why can't we have a big bit? Why just a little bit? I would vote for a party in this country that was radical on growth and a redistribution of wealth, and there's not one.
Why should an entrepreneur
I see those millionaires.
Kevin?
I love wealth. Wealth is great. Millionaires are great. But ask the question, how did they often get that wealth? And they got it by exploitation of working class people more often than that. And I want working class people to have a bigger slice of the pie. And as far as I'm concerned, can we have a political party out there who wants to have some radical steps in terms of redistributing wealth and having a more equal society? And while I'm at it, I thought, what's his name? I had a little slip. Previous leader of the Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn, for a second, I thought Jeremy Corbyn was going there and I was all for it. But what we have is real...
Yeah, I was just about to say, Ruth.
A lack of radicalism in this discussion.
I'm itching to be radical and tell Kevin some things, but we've not heard from you yet.
I remember Labour trying this in the 1970s, and the result was that the rich got up and took off for tax havens. That's what they do. The Treasury would love to get as much money off anybody as possible, but you have to weigh up whether or not they'll actually pay up or whether they will decamp. You have to weigh up the importance of having this country seen as a good place to make money and prosper, which actually feeds into the economy. You have to... Corbyn would have just impoverished the country in 10 minutes. Very easy thing to do. They'd be off. hang on.
You tell him, you tell him.
One of the things what you find with the rich, very true in America, they like to donate. They like philanthropy. It's very good what they have been actually doing with billionaires of getting them to sign up to give away large amounts of money in philanthropy. They want to have their own, would you really want to pour your excess money into the state when you don't even know what they're going to do with it? No, let them keep doing what they're doing. The concert halls, the schools, an enormous number of donations to the universities. Look, Oxford and Cambridge are groaning with money presented by rich people. We need people here to know that they can make money, to know that they are entitled to be aspirational about it, and to know that they will be allowed to keep most of it, and that they will be taxed reasonably.
Well, there you go. Kevin is itching to come back, but I'm going to ask you to pause, hold your thought, because I think you made a very good case on your view, so I think you landed your point, and I want to hear your thoughts on a different topic, and if I go too much on that one, I won't get a chance to ask you about this one, because I want to talk about Mickey Mouse degrees. Lots of talk about what they are and whether or not they exist and how useful they are, but now universities are facing pressure from the government to tackle so-called low-value degrees by threatening to withdraw student loan funding from low-quality courses. But this is why I wanted to pause your thoughts. I wanted to ask you about this.
Yes.
What is a low-quality course? Should we care about it?
Yes.
And are these rules the right rules that have come out today? Up to £500,000 fines for courses that are failing to deliver jobs.
I think that there's a lot of Mickey Mouse degrees at the moment in universities. But, Michelle, the way that I would pitch this discussion is I do think, on the one hand, we need more high-quality training schemes, better apprenticeships, and it shouldn't be seen as secondary. So young people in school coming up at the age of 15, 16 to 18 should be given a choice of what direction they want to go. I left school, for example, at 16 and did an apprenticeship for 5 years as a qualified electrician and came into education a wee bit later. I don't think the same opportunities exist today in Britain. That's the first thing. But the second thing is this about universities. I mean, what's going on here with this report in the first place of the government? Do they think that a university is a job training scheme? Do they think that you go to university to get a degree, to get a job? No, you don't.
Well, the university's minister said she welcomed a crackdown, adding when students go to university, they do so in the pursuit of a life-changing education, one which helps pave their way towards a highly skilled career.
It's so Philistine and degraded, that view of education. It's embarrassing. Can I just say out loud, to see if anybody still believes in this idea, that a university is a place where you go to stand on the shoulders of giants intellectually, where you go to discover the world, where you inculcate a spirit of curiosity and wisdom and ideas.
And that's great if you're funding it yourself, but if the taxpayers are funding it via loans...
When we have a decent society and we take some of that wealth of those billionaires and we create a better society, we should be able to fund an education and a free university education for everyone. But I really want to say this. It's a very instrumentalist view of the university that the government ministers have at the time, and we need to reclaim the university as a site of intellectual inquiry and not a job training scheme.
And that's fascinating. But Ellie Mae O'Hagan, if we want to reclaim the university as a site of what? Intellectual inquiry? What
Correct.
do you say?
Yes, exploration and inquiry.
Yeah, intellectual exploration. That's wonderful. But why should random taxpayers be funding someone else to go on a jolly?
Well, I mean... The first thing to say is that the universities are the only element of our education system that aren't universal and free. And also, it's normal in other countries for universities to be paid for through taxation. You know, like Germany, for example, it's normal there for students to go to university for free. And I think... You know, we've got to remember that everybody benefits from an educated society, from a society that is intellectually curious and where people have the opportunity to learn in the way that they want to learn. You know, we know that because we can see statistically that societies that allow that tend to do better in lots of other different ways. So I agree with Kevin on that. But I also think, you know, when it comes to this question, I think that the universities are being blamed for something here that actually isn't their fault. So we've done research at class that has shown that during the pandemic, if you were under 35, you were 5 times more likely to lose your job than if you were over 35. And you can see, actually, if you look at these statistics, that by every measure, young people are more likely to be paid less, they're more likely to be in the private rented sector, which is becoming extortionate. They're more likely to have precarious work. And actually, the problem here is the kind of economy that we've created, that young people are going into, means that it's very hard for them to get jobs that can actually pay the bills and to keep them because these jobs are too insecure. And I just think it's a big distraction for the government to blame that on universities, to deflect from their failures in making an economy that provides for the basics of the people in this country.
Ruth Dudley-Edwards?
The con trick is that to get money, a lot of crap universities have encouraged kids to go there who should never have gone to university. And a lot of this starts with...
Have my water if you want. I've not even touched it and I've not got COVID. There you go.
Well, I think maybe I have.
Oh, don't say that. You'll clear the entire building. Everyone will be out the door.
Well, I caught it here. I was talking fine when I came in.
Oh, dear. OK, I'm saying nothing. Anyway.
But having said that, no, Tony Blair and this thing about we must have over 50% of the young must go to university.
Yeah, education.
A lot of kids that were not academic were sent to universities to run up enormous debts and then get rubbish jobs. Or if they didn't drop out. I mean, I think doing something about the dropout levels is well worth doing because there are some universities that are just taking the money from kids who after a year have gone and they've run up debts of 20,000 quid or whatever, 10,000 to the university. And I think we've got to stop sending to university people who shouldn't be there. Why are nurses now required to have a university degree? Why do the police want to do the same? It's ludicrous, completely ludicrous. We need universities to go back to being places of academic excellence, actually. And Kevin is quite right. I mean, I'm not happy with him bankrupting the entire country because of his crazy lefty views. But what I will say is that he and I see it in exactly the same way.
Oh, well, there you go. I'm going to pause on that note. Then you two have reached an agreement. I didn't actually think that was going to happen on this show. So I'm going to pause that one there. Susan's been in touch on the email and says, yes, apprenticeships are better. She says many people go to university and end up working in places like call centres. I did an apprenticeship and I ended up working in a call centre. Don't know what that says about me.
And now GB News.
And now here I am, the dizzy heights of Dewbs & Co. There you go, an apprenticeship all the way. Joking aside, though, actually, Kevin, I did actually do what we used to call a YTS. Yeah. I think the government changed its official name then, but we still called it that. And I honestly, without a shadow of a doubt, it was the best thing I've ever done in terms of my career, because I didn't really go to school, didn't get any qualifications. And that put me on the right track. It gave me confidence, it gave me education, qualifications. And I think I even got 30 quid a week. I was absolutely minted. Anyway, on the tax situation, Carol has been in touch on the email saying, why should they ask to pay more? If everybody paid their dues, which we know many don't, then they wouldn't need to. If they want to give more, why don't they get themselves to food banks and homeless hostels, etc.? Don't give it directly to the people, don't give it to the government, who will just squander it. David says you cannot pay more tax than is due. Yes, you can, actually. You can voluntarily make contributions if you wish. As we were explaining a little bit earlier on there, David, someone else says, don't tax the super rich more, just close the loopholes so that they don't avoid tax. And you tell me to start with a particular company, but for legal reasons, I won't mention that company, but I've registered it in my mind, and I hear you. William says, tax should only ever be a percentage of your income, and it should be the same percentage for everyone. The rich have only got their money because of smart choices. There you go, lots of thoughts coming in from there, lots of divided opinions as well, I have to say. Now, before I go, let me ask you a very quick question. Are you stingy? I am, I've got to say. There's a big mums forum, Mumsnet. People there have been sharing their extreme examples of penny pinching, including a father who refused to pay £1 for parking on his son's wedding day, and a half-drunk bottle of wine being given as a wedding present, and people taking buffet food home from a funeral wake. I genuinely don't see what's wrong with that last one, because why would you? No, I don't. Honestly, why would you have a buffet and leave all the food? Why don't you say, that's just weird. I am quite tight. I was brought up, without excess money, and why would you waste food?
No, I hear you, Michelle, I hear you.
Is that to me, that's not even stingy. It's sensible. Are you stingy? Anyone on the panel? Ruth, have you got any tight habits you want to share?
I'm pretty feckless, but I do have a thing about paper. I will find myself using envelopes as a notepad.
Do you?
Yes, I sometimes reach for paper from the waste paper basket to scribble on. But otherwise, I am feckless.
Kevin, are you tight?
Talking about paper, when I was back
Short,
home...
this has got to be a short
when I was
story,
back home,
really
went to my
short.
mate's house, and when you went to the toilet, they didn't have toilet roll. They had the newspaper cut up into wee squares, which you used. So I look back on that and I think, were they stingy or were they really poor?
Or were they just very smart people?
That's what I'm asking.
Ellie Mae Hagan,
Anybody
super
else do
quickly, I've
that?
got about 10 seconds. Are you tight? Have you got any habits you want to share with the nation?
No, I'm pretty feckless as well. But funnily enough, I also am quite stingy when it comes to paper. That is the only thing that I'm really stingy about. So, yeah.
I'm stingy and tight with absolutely everything. One of my worst habits is if I get a letter that's got a stamp that's not been stamped, I take it off and I put it on the side to use again. And, of course, I never ever use it again, so I don't know why I bother. Anyway, that's pretty much me done. In fact, it is definitely me done. I'm running over my time. I'll shut up and get off your screens and make way for Nigel Farage. I'll see you tomorrow at 6 o'clock till 7 o'clock. Thanks for your company.
Hello again. It's turning cold out there. Clear skies for most, leading to a fairly hard frost, certainly for parts of England and Wales, the coldest night of the winter. But cloud will be increasing across the northwest around this area of high pressure. We'll see more cloud already spilling into Northern Ireland and Western Scotland, and that will help to keep the temperatures up here. But certainly elsewhere, frost forming out there at the moment, and it's going to just get colder and colder across the Midlands, Wales and southern England. Still a bit of cloud and 1 or 2 showers across Norfolk. They should fade away, and there's that cloud spilling into Northern Ireland, and later in the night, North Wales, northwest England as well. And that will help to lift the temperatures maybe back above freezing, but across the east and south, widely below freezing and well below as well, maybe as low as -6 or -7 in some rural spots. So a cold start to Friday, a frosty start, but another day of sunshine across southern England, eastern Scotland. A cloudy day for Wales, Northern Ireland, western Scotland, northwest England, seeing more cloud here too. Spots of rain in the far northwest where it'll be breezy, but here's where we'll see the top temperatures. Elsewhere, 6, 7, 8 degrees, certainly feeling warmer than today across the east because the winds won't be as strong here, and we should see quite a bit more sunshine. The cloud will increase across southern parts during Friday evening and across the north as well. The cloud thickening, so some patchy rain over the Western Isles, the Highlands and the Northern Isles as we head into the weekend. And we always like to see some cloud and rain across Western Scotland. Probably not much in Glasgow, and certainly further south. Most places will be dry on Saturday. Some sunny spells for Aberdeenshire and down the eastern side of England as well. We should see some sunshine. Generally, though, fairly cloudy, and where it's pretty glum, temperatures could struggle, 6, 7 degrees. Again, the top temperature probably in the far northwest, where there will be some patchy rain this weekend. But apart from that, most of us staying dry with light winds, quite a lot of cloud. Some places there will see some blue sky.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the